right, just to confirm for my listeners who I have on the phone right now, it is the one and only DJ Reid Speed. Is that you?
That's me. How's it going?
It is going lovely. I'm up here in Canada. It is freezing cold. You're out in the West Coast right now, if I'm not mistaken. Like, how's the weather where you are?
Uh, it's pretty beautiful. Sorry to report. It's about 65 degrees and sunny today.
For my Canadian listeners, that's about 20, I believe. I think. So
It's pretty warm.
it's warm. It's beautiful. There's no ice, and we will live vicariously through you, Ms. Speed. Okay, so I like to start off with some fun questions, get to know you a little bit. So the first question I've got for you, if you can remember, what was the first album you ever purchased with your own money as a child?
Def Leppard's Hysteria.
Wow. It dates you a little.
I remember going into Tower Records and being so excited because I loved the song Pour Some Sugar on Me.
Damn right, man.
Yeah, obviously it dates me.
Well, and to be honest, it's held the test of time. We still hear it on radios today, do we not?
Yeah, on the oldies station.
It's sad that you do that now, eh? You're like, now I'm listening to the same station my parents used to listen to.
I can't lie. It's not false.
I hear you, and it happened to me too. The first time I heard the Foo Fighters on what we have up here is called Q107, and I was like, what are they doing on Q107? They're from the oh shit, I'm getting old.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you this: what was the first concert you ever attended?
They Might Be Giants. My parents were very odd, and they didn't. That's actually not true. That's the first concert of my own choosing that I attended. I attended a lot of concerts at Lincoln Center and the Met. My parents took me to the opera and like the symphony a lot as a child, but those were not my choice. They did not particularly allow me to go to concerts, so they took me to the They Might Be Giants concert.
Interesting.
At the Beacon Theater. Yeah, it was great. I still love that band to this day.
Honestly, I'm ignorant, not familiar with They Might Be Giants.
They're just like goofy. I don't even know. It's like goofy nonsense music. I don't know how else to describe it.
Slapstick meets music. I'm assuming.
No, it's just goofy. I don't know. Like, I wouldn't say that it's actually meant for kids because it really wasn't. But I think in their later years, they did end up making a lot of kids albums because they found out that was like their largest fan base.
Gotcha. Okay, well, and speaking kind of sticking with children, I guess, what was your favorite cartoon growing up? Or even give me a couple.
Well, I wasn't allowed to watch that much TV as a kid.
Interesting.
So I'm trying to think, what did I actually watch? I think the Smurfs and like Garfield was the only ones I really watched.
So
I never had that whole like after school cartoons thing.
And is this because you had parents that didn't allow you to watch television?
Correct.
So what would you be doing? Would you be reading books, magazines, comic books? What were you into?
I had a very sheltered childhood, so I wasn't really allowed to play with other children. I had very structured activities most of the days. Like I had French tutor, and we had a lot of, I had to participate in a lot of sports that I didn't want to. My school required every student to play every sport all seasons, competitively. So
Wow.
that took up a lot of time. And then, yeah, the French tutor, the Latin tutor. At one point I had dance, I did gymnastics, I did violin, I did piano. Like, I did not have any free time of my own choosing. And if I did have free time, I was reading or riding my bike in circles around in front of my house because I wasn't allowed to go anywhere.
Quite authoritative and academic. Kind of sounds like Ashley Banks when I think of that. Like, you remember the episode were you a Fresh Prince fan? I shouldn't assume. Did you watch Fresh Prince?
Not really.
No, okay, because you weren't able to. Okay.
I mean, I know, I'm familiar with it, but I don't know who that character was.
Ashley was the daughter. There's an episode where Will's like, what do you do for fun? And she pulls out her schedule, and Monday's piano, Tuesday's tennis, Wednesday's glee club, and like she's got no time to be with her friends. It's all structured. Her parents have her doing something and he's like, well, here, let's go down to the pawn shop and get a drum kit. You know, and he ends up just banging drums with her for a bit, right? But okay, with that, then let's dive into this. What was your first then rave experience?
Ooh, okay. So the first time I ever got convinced to go to a rave, I'll be honest, I was told that I would get free acid if I paid the $10 admission fee, and I did. And the first time I went, I actually hated it. I didn't know anything about electronic music. I was really into like grunge and alternative, like heavy metal, like a lot of different Sonic Youth, Nirvana, Dinosaur Jr. kind of stuff back then. Um, and yeah, I just, it was like at the beginning of my teenage rebellious experimental phase. And yeah, I was so confused. It was actually this, um, man, it's crazy when I think about it. It was a thing that was called the See the Light Tour. It was Moby, Orbital, The Orb, and Aphex Twin. Cool. I want to say it was at the Roseland Ballroom. But I hated it. I didn't understand. I just thought they were playing like this noise that was the same for like the whole night, and I was so confused, and I really didn't like it. But a couple months later, I had run away from home to escape a lot of crazy shit that my parents were doing, and so some people that I was hanging with convinced me to go to a rave I was living in Boulder, Colorado at the time. I'm from New York, and I ran away to Boulder, Colorado. And yeah, my friends convinced me to go, and it was called a rave called Eden. And it was crazy. Like, I went, and we were supposed to take all these drugs, and then my friends dropped the drugs into the dirt when we got there, and there was no lights, and no one had phones and stuff. And so I was just completely sober at this party, and I loved it. I realized as soon as I was walking in, I saw this crowd, and I saw the DJ, and something I had done my whole childhood was make mixtapes obsessively. I was obsessed with creating mixtapes, like just recording stuff off the radio, like pieces of conversation, like little audio collage type of things. And I was struck by the fact that it seemed like they were making a mixtape for 5,000 people live. And I immediately fell in love. And then about 4 or 5 in the morning, DJ Dan came on and was playing like West Coast breaks. And I went into a subwoofer and had like a spiritual experience. And I just knew that was what I was meant to do with my life.
Well, you know what, it kind of leads into my next question, but hearing your answer, it somewhat answers my next question, but I want you to elaborate a bit more. And it sounds like as a child, you were already a bit of a DJ. You said making audio collages. And it's interesting that when you came into the rave at first, you didn't find yourself somewhat gravitating towards the sound. It was when you realized that, hey, what I was doing is somewhat what they're doing, and I want to do that too. So I got to ask you, when did you become a DJ? When did that begin?
Like at that moment, I was determined. I knew that was what I was meant to do. I was like put on this earth. I had found my purpose, and I immediately started to plan on how I would save enough money to buy the equipment. I literally started saving my money that day. I just started saving up. It took about 2 years to get enough money to buy the equipment. And in my senior year of high school, I purchased my DJ equipment and started learning how to DJ, which was crazy because I didn't know any DJs. I didn't even know anyone at that point. Like, I had been sent home from Colorado. I was back in New York. I was in public school, which I had never been in my life, and didn't know what to do with myself. And nobody was going to raves in my town, so I would just go to raves by myself every weekend. Sometimes during the week, I would just go and try to learn everything I could and like soak it all in, because I didn't know. It was like you couldn't ask anyone. There was no internet really. Like, I mean, there was internet, but it wasn't widespread, and there was nothing. It was just like you had to go to a record store to get a flyer, to call an info line, to drive to a map point, to find a place to rave type of thing.
Yep. We had the same issues up here. It's interesting that that type of rave structure follows itself all through North America, the maps and the hotlines and the shuttle buses. I guess when did DJing graduate into producing?
I mean, I wanted to learn almost as soon, within like 1.5 years or 2 years of starting to get booked. I really became interested in production, and I started saving all my money, because back then the cost of producing was so prohibitively expensive. You couldn't just get Ableton Live cracks and shit. It was like, no, you have to get $1,500 to buy an Akai MPC 1200 or an Emu sampler. So that's what I did. I worked and worked and worked, and all my money for my DJ gigs I saved up until I had enough money to buy the equipment. And then I had met Ming and FS. They were like one of the bigger, I don't know, they were doing really experimental stuff in the late 90s. They were doing a mashup of drum and bass, turntablism, live music, other genres, playing all these big, they were signed to Ohm Records, which was a big deal back in the day. They were one of the only drum and bass type artists to ever get signed to Ohm and be touring at that level. And I had met them, and they were more interested. I had met them right when they were getting interested in drum and bass, and we kind of worked out a deal that I would teach them about drum and bass, and they would teach me about producing. So FS kind of taught me a lot about producing at the beginning. But I never really got it with the gear. It was like, I'm not a technical person. It kind of went over my head. So I struggled with it until I got Reason in like, I don't know, maybe like 2000, 2001, whenever it came out. And then I like really started learning.
You know, I'll tell you a little producer joke that you'll get because you use Reason. I often say to people, in order to have Logic, you got to use Reason.
Yeah, there's another version of that joke that's like, why can't women produce? And it's like, because they don't use Logic and Reason. And it's like, oh, okay.
That's a little bashy. I wouldn't say it like that. But no, obviously women can produce, as you and others have shown. Let me ask you this: do you think it's important for a DJ to be successful in the drum and bass industry that they must be a producer?
I mean, at this point, yeah. I came up at a different era where that was not a prerequisite. So I was very, I don't know, lucky, but at the time that just wasn't a thing. At the time that I came up, the barrier to entry was being a great DJ and being really supportive of the scene. So yeah, now today it's absolutely essential. If you are not a producer, you're I mean, if your goal is to just kind of play all the shows locally, I would say maybe not. If you just are very supportive of the scene and you're a really good DJ, like you can carve out a really good place for yourself as a local DJ that like opens for all the big drum and bass acts, you know, and you can have a very fulfilling DJ career doing just that. But if you have any aspirations of touring, you absolutely need to produce. Which is it's kind of sad to me that the art of DJing has become this lost art that is not really a thing that the consumers care about anymore. Like back in my days, it wasn't a consumer-based experience. It was like a co-creation between the DJ and the people at the party who were dancing and the punters, you know?
Sure.
Now it's just like a consumptive experience. Like the audience expects to pay to consume a set. You know, they call it a performance, and it's like, no, that all that language like makes me bristle, because I'm like, I'm not performing. Like, I don't even want people looking at me. That was sort of the thing that drew me to DJing, was like this whole Wizard of Oz, man behind the curtain aspect of it, where you were like a shaman that was sort of just controlling the energy, but it wasn't really about you. It was about the energy that you controlled. Now it's like, oh, everyone's looking at you and they want to see you perform and they want to see your visuals, and like, it's like, dude, I'm just blending records. It's not that interesting to watch. No offense.
It makes me think of that saying, you used to have to be important to become famous. Now you're famous, so that makes you important.
Yeah.
You know, why are you up on the stage? I agree with you about the art of DJing. I think it's happening to a lot of people, sense of I don't know. It's a sense of being spoiled. I think what's happened over the last year with our isolation might restore some of that appreciation, I guess, and gratuity for the performance and the performers and the art that is occurring. I try and quantify some of the greatest DJs and ask, what do you think it is? And I'll ask you this: what do you think it is that separates the greatest DJs from the good ones?
I mean, great DJs understand how to take feedback from the crowd and give them back exponentially more energy. That's what makes it great. If you've got a great story to tell and you're able to take that energy and build this beautiful spiritual experience for the audience, then you've done the right job. For me as a DJ, now people who are artists that are getting booked because they're producers, it's a whole different thing. Like, people are just coming to see them play their songs and maybe some other songs, and that's a completely different art form to me. Like, being a producer who gets booked to play a set because you're a famous producer is one thing. That has nothing to do with being a great DJ.
Well, we think, Pendulum is a good example of what you're talking about, where they grab Del Hornet and you have producers teaming up with DJs. Bad Company was a great group of guys that some of them were more strengthened in spinning, whereas others were better on the software. But I think
I don't know about that. I actually would kind of disagree on both of those. Like, Pendulum took stadium rock and made it EDM. Like, that was their thing. I don't like El Hornet being their DJ. Like, he's a great DJ for sure, but they didn't. Pendulum sets, when it's Pendulum playing a Pendulum set, it's not a DJ set at all. When it's a DJ set, it's always listed as a DJ set and really has only a little bit to do with Pendulum per se.
I get what you mean by that. I can appreciate those words.
Bad Company, they were all like really good producers.
I disagree with that.
I mean, I would disagree that they were all good DJs, but like,
I would agree they're all good DJs. That's the thing. I would say they're all good DJs. I don't, and it's my taste. That's a taste thing. I don't agree with that they're all great producers, but I've seen them all spin, and they're all amazing DJs in my opinion.
Okay.
But okay, going on here, I guess we kind of touched on it when we were talking about if should a DJ be a producer. You kind of said there that you don't like seeing producers necessarily just go up and drop a set because they're a producer.
No, I didn't say that I don't like that. I just said there's a different distinction between that and what a DJ does. No, I don't have any problem with it at all. Like, I think it's great as a thing. If you're a great producer and you produce a bunch of tracks, of course people are going to want to hear you play your tracks as a producer.
Well, there are producers that don't spin. Like, we've got a guy up here, Dave the Nemesis Whalen, who works with Marcus Visionary. I'm sure you're familiar with Marcus. Dave doesn't spin, right? And to be honest, they don't work together anymore, so I shouldn't say that they work together. They used to work together. But Dave was always the one making the music. Marcus was the one putting it. Marcus produced as well, but sometimes producers can use DJs like Nicky Blackmarket, Kenny Ken. They're guys that have been asked to use as a conduit to get a lot of guys behind the scenes. Congo Natty working with a lot of guys behind the scenes and acting as a conduit. So there is. Do you get what I'm saying, Reid?
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. There's been I mean, especially in the 90s, there was a good amount of those ships where there was like the producer guy and the DJ guy,
right. Yeah,
like, look at Goldie. He was never really a producer. He just always had really good engineers, but he was a very famous DJ, but he had his name on a lot of productions and of like very seminal records.
Right. And he's an amazing brand.
Yeah, he's a great brand, and he's, brought so much positive attention to drum and bass that it's, he's a cultural icon. It's just, there's just a bunch of different things at play. And now there are a lot of people now who don't even, with Ableton and all that, like, a lot of people don't even really DJ. They just play their sets,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get
And then other people are great DJs. We've got, like, the AMCs, the Frictions, the Andy C's, the Doc Scotts, like, those people are still holding it down for the DJ side of things. And then there's people in the middle, like the Shy FX, the DJ SS, like, people who would produce and DJ and are really good at both sides of the things.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. I got to ask you about Play Me and Play Me Too. What was the inspiration in starting that? Or those, I should say.
The inspiration for starting Play Me was really just seeing so many of my friends get fucked over, get signed, and their music never get released, get signed, never get paid, get signed, something happens, some bullshit, like, I just felt that there had to be a way to do it fairly for the artists, that artists should deserve to put their hard work into music and get paid and get their music heard in a reasonable amount of time. And the stars aligned. A friend of mine had been given a distribution deal, and they were asking him to do another label, and he didn't have time, so he asked me to do the A&R for it. And then ultimately he didn't really want to be involved. He didn't like the direction that I was trying to take it in, so he jumped out really early, and we just kind of took it from there. And then Play Me 2 came about after we had been doing Play Me for a year. It was so successful on Beatport. The first year that they offered us a direct, back in those days in like 2010, having a direct deal with Beatport was like the bee's knees, because Beatport, if you went through a distributor, they took half. But if you had it direct with Beatport, you got, 100% of the profits went to your label that you could then split with your artists. Instead of it being you ending up with 25%, you would get 50% type of thing. So that was like what everyone wanted. So they offered us that because Play Me had done so well. And that was great.
No, that is great. It's kudos to you for providing that type of service to artists that are trying to get their music out there. Thank you. What advice, I guess, do you have for other aspiring artists that are out there today that want to do something? I know we're in a different time, but what advice do you have?
They want to do something like what?
Let's say they want to be the next DJ in drum and bass. They want to become the next Reid Speed.
I mean, I would just advise you to not do that and just try to be the best you, because really that's what sets people apart. There's so many, for every one original, there's hundreds of copies that some of which do okay, and, many of whom never achieve anything. So it's just more about, like, you can be the greatest sound designer in the world, but if you don't have an artistic point of view and you don't have something you're trying to say, it's harder to communicate with an audience, But it's like today there's two different sides of things. If you're trying to be an authentic artist, you want to be as authentic to yourself and your own vision of what you want music to be as possible. If you're trying to get a job as an EDM DJ, there's a whole other route you have to take that involves like marketing plans and branding strategies and logos and scheduled posts and management and all this other stuff that has very little to do with music. So it really just depends the lane you're trying to get into, or if you're trying to create your own lane.
Well, I think that I agree with you once again, 100% wholeheartedly. I think the biggest takeaway from what you just said is be motivated to do a lot of work yourself. And
oh, absolutely. No matter what, if you're just starting out, you need to be good at all these things. Like an artist today doesn't need a label. If you're really good at branding and marketing, you can just self-promote. You can self-release all your stuff on Bandcamp, and if you're really good and you make a good brand, people will be attracted to it and people will be drawn to it, and you can grow your own fan base without the help of anyone. But I would say like 80% or more of artists are actually not really that good at all of the other stuff. They're really good at making music because they're, we're all a little, nutty when it comes to whatever stuff that we like. But most people don't have that. They're not also great branding marketers with a great eye for photography and aesthetics and graphic design and, video, Final Cut knowledge. Like, plus you got to do all these streams, and you got to have backgrounds, and you got to make it look compelling, and you got to, there's just so much stuff. So if you aren't that great at doing all the other stuff, that's the real benefit to joining a label. Because if you have a label that will help you with all that, they can you can plug into their network, and the label can introduce you to their fans, and then their fans like you, and that helps you grow your network in a way that you wouldn't be able to do on your own, because you just don't have time or like the skills to do every single one of the 5,000 jobs required to be successful today.
And if I can echo some of the sentiment you mentioned earlier, which was when you were talking about how you learned to produce and DJ, you networked. Right? You met people, you guys bounced things. I'll teach you this, you teach me that. Let's work together. So
absolutely. And kids are so lucky today that now we have YouTube videos. You can like literally get a cracked copy of Ableton and watch Noise's YouTube videos. You can watch the very best, all their studio advice and knowledge. And if you're at that age where you're lucky enough that you're still in school, you still live at home with your parents, you don't have bills to pay, like, the young producer landscape is exploding because there's so much knowledge available online that kids can learn. By the time that they're sent out into the world to have to pay their own bills, they're already virtuosos, they're already masters of it. So take advantage of that while you don't have to pay bills. Take advantage of all that time.
That's that's gospel coming from the one and only Reid Speed. We got a couple questions here. These are a couple fun ones. We're going to end off. Once again, I want to say thank you for taking the time to share your journey with me and my listeners. So let's say, are you familiar with Mount Rushmore? Of course, you're American. You're familiar with Mount Rushmore. Most of these interviews I do are with people overseas, and they're like, some of them aren't. So we're going to create a drum and bass Mount Rushmore. I'd like to know who your four faces would be.
Um. That's an unfair question, but I'll try. I'll try because it's like each figurehead like represents an entire army of people behind them, you know. And sometimes, often, the people that you would choose to be the face of something aren't necessarily the ones who had to do all the work, but it would be like Andy C, Goldie, LTJ Bookham, maybe like DJ Hype.
That's awesome. I think that's great. I think that's a great four.
It's just covering like the foundations, and that's like not even fair to so many others that were so instrumental, but you know, all of their brands are still very influential to this day. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, the one that impressed me the most is anyone who puts Bookham. I personally love Bookham, and like you just said, he's still the sounds that he created in the pioneer days that people still use and recreate today were derived from what Bookham did. And
I mean, liquid drum and bass, it all comes from Bookham.
Yeah.
To me.
But the thing that gets you, this is episode 109 we're on, and I'd say maybe 4 people have mentioned him. Not to say that other people haven't thought of him, it's just he doesn't fall into their 4, and to me it saddens me because he doesn't even fall into my 4, sadly. Because I'm an MC guy, I put Det, Skibba, and Stevie up next to Andy. So he doesn't even fall, but whenever I hear people that are connoisseurs of production or DJing, and he gets left off, I'm a little saddened. But thank you.
Yeah, he just, he was really important in that shaping that sound. And there would, like, if it were not for LTJ, like, liquid wouldn't even be a thing today. So.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. Final question for you. We're gonna put a vault together. So we're gonna put 5 items in this vault. We're gonna put it underground, and in 5,000 years, they're gonna dig up this vault, and we want them to know what the rave once was. And this vault is huge. You can put anything. You put full cities in there, whatever you want. What 5 items would you put in the vault?
I don't know.
I could think of 5 items that you've said in this interview. One of them's acid. I was like, when you said $10 to get in for a hit of acid.
But we could do so much more by saying I would put like the Limelight from 1990 to 1994.
Ooh.
I would put like Fabric in there.
Okay, I like your imagination.
Like the what was that called back in the? I don't know. I was like in fucking grade school back then, so I didn't really know. But like Storm Rave, I would just like put whole ass venues and like umbrella brands of things. Like I don't know. Like what was it called? Oh God, I'm blanking so hard because I didn't have internet back then. V-Rave. It was like an internet relay chat. The whole archive of V-Rave.
I don't remember that.
It was like I didn't have it, so I couldn't participate in it. But it was like how people in the '90s who had early internet communicated with each other.
Via the rave community, you're saying, specifically, right?
Yeah. No, like literally, it was called V-Rave. That was the name of the channel. Like. It's hard to even to discuss it because I literally didn't use it, but I knew so many people that did. I was so jealous that everyone had internet, but like internet was really expensive back then, so I only had internet like at school in the computer lab.
Hey, I can empathize. I'm with you.
It's crazy to think I worked in a record store and we did not have internet at all. Like, I did all of the stock by hand, and people would order records by calling the store on the telephone, and I would play them records over the phone through the headphones on a turntable. And this is like in our lifetime. It's like I sound like a freaking dinosaur saying that, but it's crazy to think about that. Oh yeah, maybe I'd put like black market records in there, in that vault.
This is a huge vault that we've had to create for Ms Reid
I
Speed
know.
here.
I'm like, we put V-Raves, we put black market records, we put the Limelight,
Fabric.
we put Fabric.
You got one more thing you can put in there. It's quite the vault too. I got to say that yes, when people dig this up, it's going to take up probably.
I would put Insomniac Productions.
Insomniac Productions. Don't forget.
There you go. Yeah, they're. I mean, they started the rave scene on the West Coast, and obviously they're the ones that do EDC and all that now. But they really started from like underground raves and built it into an EDM worldwide empire. So
I believe that's where I read your biography before you and I spoke. I did a little research, and I believe it was from InsomniacRecords.com or something. It was, I believe, I may be wrong.
Yeah, I played EDC. I've played a bunch of their shows, and I put out a record with them a couple of years ago.
So that makes sense. Okay, sorry, I said that was the final one. I got one last one. Where can people hear you today if we want to listen to Reid Speed? Where do people go?
Oh, well, actually, today, I don't know if you mean today, every Sunday I am live on Twitch. Twitch.tv/Reid Speed TV every Sunday, Pacific Standard Time, noon, till I'm over it. I do that live. Every month I do a monthly mix series, a new one that I just started this year called No Speed Limit. That's on my SoundCloud, which is soundcloud.com/Reid Speed. You can find me on all the major social media networks at Reid Speed. But if you want the live stuff, Twitch every Sunday.
Twitch every Sunday. I'll put links to everything that you mentioned down below. So if people would like to listen, please go there. Reid, I'd like to continue talking to you. So I'm going to sign off to the listeners, but please stay on the phone with me, okay?
Okay.
All right. Well, that was her. I hope, as always, you guys enjoy listening as much as I enjoy chatting. Thank you. And until next time, peace out.